Joe to the stand.
My name's Joe, and I'm a Crystal Meth Addict.
Hey, Joe.
Wow, this is a full house. You guys are awesome. We're, how many are here for the very first time tonight? Oh, good, good. Well, first of all, welcome. And second, in just a matter of house cleaning, housekeeping, I should say, you may perceive us as a little different here. What we do here is we just take the instructions for a step or so a week directly out of this book. And we use this book in Crystal Meth Anonymous. Why?
Because they work.
12 steps have already been proven that they work, and the original book of instruction in the 12 steps is Alcoholics Anonymous' book. Some people want to know, why do we use Crystal Meth Anonymous when we're going to use their book? Well, the reason we use Crystal Meth Anonymous is because they have no singleness of purpose, and we want everyone to feel welcome here. Did you get the sense of everybody that was here tonight? So that's why we do it. And tonight we're in steps 5, and we're probably going to take a look at 6 and 7. They all kind of roll together. So we'll probably take a look at 5, 6, and 7. 6 and 7 often are not very well understood by people that haven't entered into the manner of living because of the way, the all-inclusive nature of the steps. They sort of are the growing point, but they're smack in the middle. But we'll try and help you understand that a little better tonight. The step 5 instructions start on page 72 in chapter 6. And if you have a book to follow along with, it's always a good idea to read your own big book. That's a really bad idea if you want to get well to have someone read your big book for you. What I'm not going to do tonight is tell you what this book says. I'm going to show you what this book says to me and encourage you to have your experience with it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right, so are we there? Everybody that wants to follow along? There?
There.
Chapter 6, what's the name of the chapter?
Into action.
Did you notice how we went from how it works into action? Any of you wonder why they did that? Where there wasn't an into thinking chapter? You notice that in AA's program of recovery, they recognize that most of us tried to think our way into better acting all the way here. So now that we've landed here, most of us don't get here on a winning streak. They'd like for us to act our way into better thinking and then start working on disciplining our thought life. Does that make sense? Okay, so it starts out into action. It says, having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? How many of you had some question about what you were going to do about your inventory once you got it done? How many of you were more like most of us, and someone just told us do the inventory and I'll tell you what you're going to do next?
Right.
There you go. Okay, yeah, when they wrote this book, they had an idea that they would send this out to the masses and people would read this and recover on their own and start their own AA groups and all kinds of thoughts of grandeur. And they discovered later that that wasn't so. You notice how everything's done in 12s in AA's book, except there's not 12 chapters. There was a 12th chapter plan for how to recover on your own. They thought they had found a guy who had read this book and found a way to do it, and they sent him money for a bus ticket. When he got to New York, he was too drunk to get off the bus. If you doubt me, check silkworth.net. You can read about the story. So they scrapped that chapter. They've known from the beginning we can't recover on our own by reading this book because it's a book of experience. It's written in past tense. If someone doesn't help us find our experience in it, we can't find it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So then it goes on to say, we've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. Is that what you've been trying to do?
Yes.
Did you notice how many people said they'd been blessed with a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps and we're working with others? Put your hands up again if that's true for you. Look around the room and see that. The rest of you will be doing the same thing soon if you want to get well. It's the all-inclusive nature of the steps. The only reason I do any of the other steps is so that I can be a proper witness to others. And if I don't take this faith out for a walk, it won't grow sufficient to overcome addiction. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So then it goes on to say we've admitted certain defects and we've ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. What is the trouble in a rough way?
Fear.
Okay, it's experiential. The main problem, the alcoholic, the addict, centers in the mind. Depending on how you've internalized your fourth step, we've recognized now that we might be spiritually sick.
Just a little.
And being spiritually sick, I'm driven more by fear than by love. Anyone else have that experience? And so depending on where you are in the journey, we may have found out that in a rough way, what the trouble is that fear is at the root of my troubles. Any of you kind of see why we do what we do with the inventory? Okay. Okay, so we put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. Have you guys done that? Most of you done an inventory?
Mm-hmm.
Those of you that haven't done an inventory, that's okay. We're trying to help it make sense, help it make sense to you, because once you understand what the spiritual approach is, it should make sense to you as examined by your logic. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So then it goes on to say, now these are about to be cast out. This requires action on our part, which when completed will mean that we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. Do you notice how in step 5 we're going to get to the nature? And then later on in 6 and 7 we're going to be looking at shortcomings and defects of character. Shortcomings and defects of character probably are talking about the same thing, aren't they?
Yeah.
Nature seems to be getting at something a bit deeper, doesn't it?
The root.
So it may persist, you think? That thing at my nature may persist in my human condition. Any of you had some persistent human condition?
Very persistent.
This brings us to the 5th step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. This is perhaps difficult.
Oh.
How many of you have not yet done your inventory because you fear telling all your story to somebody else? That's a common experience. And we want you to know, we know. I want to tell you on the other side of that, on the other side, and you can look at anyone in the room, we finally become a member of this Society of the Spirit when we take ownership of who and what we are and share it with another. Because all of us come here with a past. So if you're fearing it, please partner up with someone here tonight. Janet, I'll introduce you to a number of women here tonight. Be happy and honored to walk with you. Right? All right? All right, so this is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. We think we've done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. How many of you still think that from time to time? It's a matter of living, right?
Yeah.
So I don't care how long you've been here. Doug's been here 22 years. Ask him how many times today he thought he'd done well enough admitting them to himself. Right? We do that, don't we? Okay. There's doubt about that, isn't there, Doug? Yes. There's doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. How many of you relate to that? This is a book of experience. These guys wrote this. They've been doing this for a while. They wrote this book, and they still think they've done well enough, and then they discover, as they start to suffer, that solitary self-appraisal was insufficient. I'm going to have to cop to it. Anybody else?
Oh, yeah.
It really sucks. I'd rather be dead than wrong.
Oh, yeah. Heck yeah.
Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We'll be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. See, they're never going to ask us to do anything they can't give us a good reason for. Have you ever had this approach laid out for you and it made no sense?
Oh, yeah.
Our effort is to make sure from now on when anyone sees the AA solution, it is laid out and makes sense to a reasonable person. That's what this meeting's about. It should always make sense. Right? Any faith that works, from time immemorial, read any book on spirituality and faith and religion, they'll tell you two characteristics of a working true faith. One is that it makes sense. You can examine it with your logical senses. And two is it's followed by signs and wonders. Which is why we're going to get armed with the facts about ourselves. We're going to go around and spread that healing power around. And we will see those signs and wonders as we walk. A fellowship will grow up around us. Does it make sense?
Yep.
And it's always been so. Okay, so it says we will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. The best reason first. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking.
Holy moly.
Huh. How many of you came here to overcome addiction?
Oh, yeah.
Anyone here just resting? Some of us do. Man, I had a couple rest stops before I got. Anybody? Anyone come here to rest? Get the wrinkles out of your belly?
At first I did.
It happens.
Oh, yeah.
Good. But they said this step is vital. How many of you did discover that it's kind of important?
Yes, sir. Vital.
All right. So time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. How many of you sponsor people have seen that time after time?
Dude, I've done it.
And they think they're lying to us, don't they? Guys, if you haven't gone through the process, I'll tell you a little secret. Once we've been blessed with a spiritual awakening, you can't lie to us without our permission. Because we can feel you. If you're holding back, we know you're holding back. So you're only killing you.
Yep.
Okay? Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they have turned to easier methods. Can you guys think of some?
Yeah.
That it's not always drinking and using, is it?
No.
Nope.
How many of you have gotten involved in other inappropriate relationships? Maybe you went out and spent the money you needed for some other cause. Okay. We go to easier methods. We solve the problem with the mind that created it. We solve our job problem with joblessness. We do things like that. Okay. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. You ever wonder? How many of you had that experience? Held something back? Wondered why you fell? The all-inclusive nature of the steps. I can't be a proper witness if I'm afraid to face who I've been. See, think about what they said. What's the first step in recovery?
Fully
Concede
concede to my
to
innermost
everybody.
We
self.
learned we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were addicts. By the third step, I'm fully conceding my human condition. By 4, I'm starting to concede that spiritual condition, and I have to take ownership of my human condition. I don't believe I'm powerless if I'm still feeling guilty about what I did today.
Yeah.
Do I?
No.
Something to think about.
Yeah, man.
So, we think the reason is that they never completed their house cleaning. They took inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they had lost their egoism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves. Notice how they put the word thought in italics? Where's the main problem center?
In the
My
mind.
brain. My mind, brain.
Guys, this thing is a progressive raising of consciousness. If I can't tell the person who loves me enough to go through my garbage with me, that deep, dark secret, I am never going to go out to the enemy and admit it to them.
Yep.
It's not going to happen. I'm going to stop right there. And I'm never going to be able to convert that experience to something useful for God's purpose and witnessing to someone else how I walk through that experience until I bring it to light. Does that make sense? So it's only for my growth that I must share that nasty stuff with you. And hopefully I've done well in following my God consciousness and I'm admitting it to the right person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. How many of you would have to admit that you're still in the process of telling all your life story? That's why we sponsor people.
Right.
Because my life story didn't end when I made a decision. It started then.
All right.
Anyone else?
Yes.
I was dying every day, one day at a time, until I made a decision to live. Yeah? Anyone else relate to what I'm talking about? Okay. More than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He's very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. Guys relate to him?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. See how they're describing a sensory experience? How many of you don't go places because you still are somewhat nervous about how you behaved there at some time in the past?
Maybe.
Still can't go back to family. Yeah, it's not uncommon. See, and as a child of the living God, you can go anywhere. So we gotta get you walking and facing that fear. Does that make sense? How am I going to help those people I hurt through my addiction if I don't go show them and witness to them what God has done for me? And it's going to take power greater than me because I'd rather just blame them and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
All right, so The inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees. Coming to his senses, he's revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. Where's my drinkers? You guys relate to vaguely remembering?
Remember it all.
Really could not.
They killed me.
Yeah. Did that trouble you when you came to your senses?
Only the first time.
Could people tell you did shit even if you didn't do it and you'd believe it?
Yes.
I knew I
No,
did.
but I did it. It's the worst thing.
I must have done something like it. These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes they'll never see the light of day. Hey guys, where'd they tell us the solution was found?
Deep
Deep
down
down
inside.
Deep down inside. And that's where I'm going to push all my garbage.
Yeah.
Not a very good plan, is it? But it's my plan. Anyone else relate to it?
Yes.
Oh, if no one saw that, we'd skated. How many of you have been on a diet and then discovered that when you ate secretly at night, the diet didn't work? Just saying. We always want to make it about big stuff, but it's about a manner of living, isn't it? He's under constant fear and tension. That makes for more drinking. Psychologists are inclined to agree with us. How many of you have visited a few shrinks on the way here?
Still do?
We've spent thousands of dollars for examinations. Is that true?
Yeah.
Did you tell them the truth? Tell them the whole truth?
No.
Did you follow their advice?
No.
We know of few instances where we've given these doctors a fair break. We've seldom told them the whole truth, nor have we followed their advice. Anybody? Where's my junkies? Did they tell you you're exhibiting drug-seeking behavior? Yeah, no shit. You got the system sort of set up that way. That's where we come to do that.
Yeah, right.
Hospitals, you know. Okay. Unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, we were honest with no one else. Think about that. Now, I'm going to go shell out, I don't know how many hundreds of dollars for this visit. I'm going to lie to them about my symptoms so I can get exactly the medication I want. And then I'm going to go out and take a month's worth in 2 days. And then I'm going to find another doctor.
Start all over.
Interesting manner of living, isn't it? Small wonder many in the medical profession have low opinion of alcoholics and their chance for recovery. How many people you imagine bet against you when you got here?
Oh, yeah.
I'll guarantee you a little secret. You're going to find people just like you to help. So that one you look at and you go, they have no chance that one can make it. That was yours. They're the mirrors. Okay? All right, we must be entirely honest with somebody if we expect to live long or happily in this world. And conversely, if I am entirely honest with somebody, I can reasonably expect to live long or at least happily in this world. And I don't know about long. I don't even consider long anymore, but I never wanted any more than happily.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay. Rightly and naturally, we think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step.
Hell yeah.
So those of you who are still chastising someone because they haven't picked who to tell their story to, that's a normal experience. Some of us just are so done, we just dump it to whoever will hear it.
Right?
And others of us, rightly and naturally, choose carefully. And it doesn't seem to matter because they wrote it in the book. Okay? Those of us belonging to a religious denomination which requires confession must and of course will want to go to the properly appointed authority whose duty it is to receive it. How many of you have sponsored someone who wanted to go tell their story to a priest? Did you discourage them?
No.
Sometimes I hear that. But it's not about them telling me about them. I already know about them. God wouldn't have put them there if they weren't a lot like me. It's about them learning about them. Right? Okay. Though we have no religious connection, we may still do well to talk to someone ordained by an established religion. You guys worked with any of those? Those guys have usually got pending charges, or afraid they will, and they want whatever they're confessing to be protected by the confessional. And you laugh, but I've heard lots of it. You know, and they may well have to face those charges, but it's not my job to force that experience. You know what I mean?
They give us lists in Ohio of priests that were in the program.
Yeah, yeah. If you need it to be protected, you know, and that's probably the way to go.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem, Of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand alcoholics. To Thomas's point, not everyone understands what the alcoholic's trying to get at. Because confession's not enough for me. I need restitution assigned to me. So I need clarity. I need to find out what drove it. I got to internalize it. Does that make sense? So if they don't understand what I'm trying to get at, and they just bless me and send me off, I'm going to go host somebody again.
Yeah.
Because that's my nature. Yeah? Okay. If we cannot or would rather not do this, we search our acquaintance for a closed-mouth, understanding friend. How many AA purists do we have here? Sponsorship's not in the big book. I've heard that before. It is, but they hadn't sponsored people yet because sponsorship came after the publication of the book. What happened when sponsorship came about was when Dr. Bob opened his hospital and they would admit alcoholics with the diagnoses of alcoholism. They wouldn't let them in the hospital unless they were sponsored in by a recovered alcoholic who agreed to take them through the steps, meet with them in the hospital, take responsibility for bringing them into the society, give you an idea what they believed sponsorship was about then. And so what they called a sponsor then was a closed-mouth, understanding friend. Until I can get a firm enough relationship with that newfound friend within me, it helps to have someone a little more stable in their spiritual path. Does it make sense? And then eventually I'm still going to want them because I'm still human. Yeah? Okay. So then it says that maybe one of our own, or perhaps our doctor or psychologist will be the person. It may be one of our own family, but we cannot disclose anything to our wives or our parents which will hurt them and make them unhappy. How many of you had parents that precede you in the fellowship? That's a common experience. And the tendency is maybe to hold out hope that they can be my sponsor because I've been lying to them all my life, right? But the real truth is I can't disclose to them some of my most intimate thoughts and feelings toward them without hurting them, and I need to work that out on a spiritual level with somebody else first. Does it make sense? To get some clarity? So that's all I'm talking about. We have no right to save our own skin at another person's expense. Such parts of our story we tell to someone who will understand yet be unaffected. Understand what?
The truth about me.
Understand the truth about me, but unaffected by that truth.
By those symptoms, yeah.
And so it often has to be somebody outside of that circle of influence I was in immediately, even as we grow, right? Because some people, as we start to put stock in people, we forget they're human and we tell them something they may be affected by what we're thinking. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So we have an obligation now to continue to spread out, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. Notwithstanding the great necessity for discussing ourselves with someone, it may be that one is so situated that there is no suitable person available. If that is so, this step may be postponed, only, however, if we hold ourselves in complete readiness to go through with it at the first opportunity. So do you guys imagine in Phoenix, Arizona today that there's just no suitable person available?
Unless you're locked up.
It's a rare instance, but if you're in county lockup and you desperately fear for what you might have to disclose, you may not even want to write it down. I've had that experience with people, and that's okay. They got some instruction for that too. We say this because we're very anxious that we talk to the right person. It's important that he be able to keep a confidence, that he fully understand and approve what we are driving at, and that he'll not try and change our plan, but we must not use this as a mere excuse to postpone. So if it's really unsafe and you just can't do it, the Spirit won't empower you to do it, then hold on to it, but get ready. Start rolling around in your head, get ready to put it on paper. Does that make sense, what they're talking about? Okay. So then it goes on to tell you when we are ready what it'll look like. Because willingness that they talked about that was fundamental, the cornerstone of our recovery, our willingness to believe, it's demonstrated through my acting or my preparing to act gladly in the dictionary of the day. Does that make sense? Okay, so it says when we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. We have a written inventory and we're prepared for a long talk. How many of you had a written inventory and were prepared for a long talk? And how many of you had no inventory because you had no idea how to do it and you had a long talk and came out with an inventory? We have both experiences. I don't know about any of you, but the very first thorough inventory I did, I was shaking too badly to write. So I was taken through it. Someone else wrote. And it's a good thing they didn't wait until I quit shaking because I wouldn't have stayed.
Right.
So we've learned some things along the way. Does it make sense? So, if you're sponsoring, it's very common for me, because they got mental blocks, they don't understand what we're asking them to do. It's very common. You guys that are sponsoring, am I telling the truth? Do we often sit down and help them write it? Yep. Talk them through it? Sometimes we make them take the pencil, but we talk them through it. Yeah, so, we're trying to get, this isn't a workbook exercise, this is intuitive work of the Spirit. The Spirit will let you know what they need, and it'll usually manifest through them, not through me. It's silly for me to think I know what you need when I don't even know what I need. What you need is in you, and you'll tell me if I have the right questions. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so we explained to our partner what we are about to do and why we have to do it. Now, if you were going through it the first time, could you have explained to your sponsor what you were about to do and why you had to do it?
I didn't know.
So they're clearly talking to you now about your experience taking someone else through the steps. See how it's experiential? This is my big book. This is how I should behave. Doesn't matter how you behave if I do the things they suggest. So see what they're saying? How many of you have figured out that you're guaranteed a spiritual awakening regardless of which side of the table you're on? What's the requirement? Honestly want to, willing to make the effort. Yeah? How many of you have sat down with someone who never got sober and you learned a lot about you from them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. He should realize that we're engaged upon a life and death errand. Do you realize that?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Now I do.
Whose?
Fine.
Yeah, this is my big book. I'm engaged on a life and death errand, and I should take it. I should take your life every bit as seriously as you take mine.
Right.
Right? Okay. Most people approached in this way will be glad to help. They'll be honored by our confidence. Ask yourself, if you're still afraid to ask someone to sponsor you, to walk with you, to think about a time when someone's asked you to help them with a problem and how honored you felt that they sought out your guidance. And then ask yourself, if self-centeredness is your problem, why would you deny another human being that experience? So you honor us if you ask for help. Does that make sense? Okay. So here's some more instruction. We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. What does that mean?
Every little thing.
Even that little thing that I don't think really matters, and I don't really want you to know it because I'm afraid you won't like me because I told you that.
Promising condition.
Yeah? It's really silly because by the time you get to this stage of your development, you're probably sitting with somebody who's heard it all.
Yeah.
We're very seldom surprised. Very seldom surprised.
Very seldom.
Okay,
Name
so
somebody's
All
done
the
it.
same.
once we have taken this step withholding nothing, we are delighted. They got a promise and condition attached. This book is an operations manual for a very complex machine, written in very simple terms. They've told us what the condition is for the sensory experience. So what was the condition?
Without holding nothing.
And hold nothing back.
I've taken this step withholding nothing. The experience, the sensory experience is I am delighted.
Yep.
So how many of you have sponsored somebody and you've gotten them to this point and you knew they weren't delighted?
Oh, yeah.
And you kept probing?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit more, if we aren't experiencing those promises, then there's another bit of review we'll look at too. We can look the world in the eye, we can be alone at perfect peace and ease. These are all states of being, do you see that? And if that's not going on, something's still amiss. How many of you took the inventory and you weren't delighted with what you found? And you were still feeling like, not so much. Okay, we're going to address that with you too, okay? So our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. See how they're talking about a sensory experience? How many of you know what they're talking about? Feeling the nearness of your Creator. Where is that Creator found?
Deep down inside.
Inside. So that's an experience within it. Some of you are feeling it now as I talk to you about it. That's why you can't lie to us without our permission, because the truth resides within. When you let it flows, and we know.
Yep.
Yeah? And you may not be conscious of it, but you will grow in consciousness of it, right? We learned how to recognize that consciousness in 2 as the feeling of love for a friend. And by 11, we're improving it by discipline in the practice. Does that make sense? Consciousness, the awareness of being aware of a power flowing through me that's not of me. We have a real solution here, guys. It's not about not picking up no matter what. It really isn't. We're not about that. We're about a spiritual experience sufficient to overcome addiction. Okay? So it said we feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. Remember they told us if you were atheist or agnostic not to be disconcerted? Because although our concept was blocking us, our experience showed. How many of you came here as an atheist or agnostic and had an experience and then realized, wow, there must be something to this God stuff? Yeah, that's it. It's a power flowing through us. Yeah? Okay. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. That's a promise and a warning. How many of you dumped your crap, didn't do anything after that, found out that the problem hadn't disappeared? It's a common experience. How many of you have had people you sponsored and you gave them the instructions and they went home, they were supposed to call you in an hour, you didn't hear from them for a month or two?
Yep.
I need a ride to Community Bridges.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You hear it a lot, and you also hear people that don't get loaded sitting in the rooms. They have no idea what the higher consciousness is about, and we judge them. But what happened is they had the experience the drink problem had been removed, and they stopped. We know from this book what their problem is if we pay attention to the states of being that they're displaying, right? But it's kind of not. Those are the guys we want to go get at the meeting instead of judging them. And say, hey man, you got something you want to talk about? We're servants, remember? Deep down inside every man, woman, and child. That guy that's really annoying you, yeah, might have to search fearlessly, but God's there. That really sucks, doesn't it? We feel we're on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. That's pretty specific, right?
Yeah.
So after I've taken a look at this, you guys that were left and you were bothered, they're going to give us an opportunity to review it. And then there's going to be one more thing we're going to do to find out why I'm still not delighted. Okay? Carefully reviewing what we've done. What have I done?
An inventory.
I've done an inventory. I've discussed it with another. I've gotten some clarity in it, perhaps. And I'm either delighted or I'm not delighted. Right? Okay? So then it says we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know Him better. Well, I just experienced the nearness of that Creator. That's probably the first honest prayer I ever said was after that experience. Any of you relate to what I'm talking about? Yes. Because I now knew that God was an experience, not a concept. Mm-hmm. And so when I thanked Him for that, knowing who I was thanking now. I wasn't just praying into space. Anyone else have that experience?
Yes.
And I've never taken anyone through the steps since that I didn't sit down and have that prayer during the review time. Because I know God better every time I go through the steps. Okay? Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we've omitted anything, for we're building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put in the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand? So I'm not going to run you back too far, but let's look at the first step. What did they say we admitted? We were powerless. And that I was powerless to manage my own life, right? 2 parts. I'm powerless over alcohol. I'm powerless to manage my own life. I have difficulty in personal relationships. I can't control my emotional nature. Relate to all of that. So those of you who left the 5th step, you hadn't omitted anything, but you were still feeling lousy. Have you still not fully conceded to your innermost self that you're powerless? Because if you have, given that you were powerless, what could you have done differently?
Nothing.
Nothing. And did not your Creator give you a little kiss to move you through the decision? Did you not get a sensory experience to let you know it was going to be okay? Because the likelihood is your sponsor didn't move you till he felt you. Does it make sense? It's pretty hard to move you if we don't feel you, because you just won't do it. We learn that stuff. Okay? So, the fact is that a lot of times we haven't internalized what powerless means. Powerless is not a theory. It's an experience. I still treat people in ways I wish I hadn't treated them, with or without a drink. Anyone else?
Yes.
That's why we have a step to admit promptly when we're wrong. We're going to take the faith out for a walk. Okay? Okay. Yeah, it sucks. I don't know. All right, so then we're going to come to believe based on an experience. They told us the experience was what? The feeling of love for a friend. The experience, you guys that weren't here for a second step experience, don't worry about the word God. We use the word God to describe the sensory experience, because if we don't come to agree on something, we'll never arrive at it. The nature of a sensory experience is we can't define it very easy. If I talk to you about a rose, we all have an idea what it smells like, right? But if I don't say rose, we'll never arrive at the same scent, will we? Because it's a sense. And in the same way, God is a sense, a sensory experience, that power we call God. And so, we're coming to recognize it, and so we'll all come to the same thing. We call it God. If you don't believe me, look at how it works. We're in 173 countries. We're represented in all kinds of faiths, peoples, come together under one God with all the power. So everyone will have the dignity to discover the truth based on the experience. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. So then, they said, based on that, I've experienced powerlessness. That's why I got here. And I have experienced power at various times in my life. I know what the experience is. Based on that, I've made a decision. Am I still happy in my decision? I've now disclosed my worst secrets that I could come up with another human being, and they haven't cast me out. Yeah? How many of you had that experience?
Right.
Your sponsor, you're scared to death because you desperately wanted them to like you, and you told them that thing, and they said, welcome aboard.
There you go. Welcome to the club.
Thanks for joining the human race with me. Right? Something like that. Yeah, so then we start to feel, some of you are feeling that now as you bring it to consciousness. Okay, so those were the questions. Now we're going to jump over to page 76. If you're still okay with the decision based on the new truth you've found and that you have disclosed to another. Does that make sense? When you turned your will and your life over to the care of God in 3, and you said that prayer, did your will and life just go forever into God's hands immediately having said the prayer? Oh. So there was some action following it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that I have, because of my alcoholic nature, they say, are you willing to go to any lengths? And I go, yeah, any lengths. Right? Anyone else? As long as it doesn't take up too much time, because I got shit to do. Okay, so now they've disclosed to me, and I've looked at it on paper, and I've disclosed it to you. I've now made it real. This is really who I am. This is the pain I've suffered. This is the pain I've caused. This is the man I hope to grow into, and I've shared that dream with another person. Does that make sense? The essence, the reason for the ideal for a better manner of living that I have created with my Creator and the help of another human being. Pretty powerful experience, isn't it? Based on that, I'm going to re-up on my third step prayer after well, they knew I wasn't convinced.
Right.
They said, we're going to start showing you what any lengths looks like. You were kind of an ass, Joe. It's going to take a while, right? Okay, so it says we've emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we've admitted are objectionable? Now, when they ask a question, they usually put a question mark after it, and they want me to ask myself that question.
Right.
Am I now willing to let God take them all? Every one. Now, I identified some gnarly stuff in my inventory. Maybe some of you did too. Some of them I was still pretty sure some of you people had caused.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
So I was not ready to let God take them all, everyone. Right? You notice that the only instruction this says, have God. Do you see that? And the only instruction we have for this step says, let God. So it implies I have a part. I'm going to have to let go of all my old weapons and enter into a new manner of living, right?
That's right.
So it's a process of, am I really willing to go make restitution for those wrongs I've identified? Am I willing to get into a forgiving place for those harms that I really didn't have a part in, but I've been dying over my resentment of them all these years? Any of that? You see what I'm saying? Okay. It's always the same as any religious experience. Repent, forgive. Repent, forgive, and walk. Right? Ask for direction, walk in faith. Until I repent and forgive, I'm blocked of consciousness. Anyone else have that experience?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so it says, can he now take them all, every one? They asked me that question twice, didn't they? Because they know by nature, yeah, take them. I'm thinking he's just going to do it. It's like fast food takeout. But no, I'm going to have to walk in it. I'm going to have to go take ownership. Not only make the approach and take ownership of the wrongs I've done, but ask to their specifications how I can make it right, and then seek every morning in prayer and meditation for the power to continue to treat them the way they've asked me to treat them. How many of you came over with a big pile of money you owed people?
Oh, hell yeah.
And they kept calling even after you were sober, wanting your money. They didn't want your money, they wanted their money. And sometimes separating us from that money is a big deal, and other things too, right? Other behaviors. So they knew that, and they said, if we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. The discipline they're teaching me here, this practice, is where they want me to get disciplined by 11 when I do my evening review. So you probably won't really get into this until you start working with others. You'll start to see how many of you figured out after a little while with your sponsor that he was really kind of a jerk? Trying to get in your business.
Oh, yeah.
So those are experiences we start to see. Now this is a person that helped me, and now I'm discovering they're human. And I don't know whether I'm seeing their actions or my thoughts about their actions, and I'm a thief and I'll steal their energy.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm starting to find out that sometimes my sarcasm is offensive. And any of you have those experiences?
Yeah.
We're learning, aren't we, as we go? So as this is a discipline that we're gonna learn the practice, and then by 11 I'm going to review it every night with the people I've worked with, not just the people that I'm sponsoring or being sponsored by, but in all my affairs. Huh? So it gets to be a fairly thorough review, and you don't have understanding of it until you're working with others, and you're conscious of that you're working with others and for whom you're working. Who are you working for now?
God.
Working for God now. You don't answer to another human being, but you're still responsible for God's purpose. Does that make sense? We're starting to grow into that, and it's scary, and it takes a power greater than me. Okay, so then it says, if we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. So guys, don't beat yourself. This is calling for an end to judgment of myself or you. If I'm still too frightened to do it, then I must not be ready. I got to keep asking for willingness and keep doing the things I am willing to do. And I keep encouraging those people around me to do the same thing. Encouraging, never discouraging. Right? That's what we read it at every meeting, but I don't think we internalize it. Do not be discouraged. No one among us, and all of us. How many of you guys today found something you were still clinging to and hadn't mentioned it in your prayer for willingness? Just pretty sure that guy's an asshole and he deserves what I did.
Yeah.
Not helping. Okay, I know, me too. It's the way it is. Okay, so then it says when ready. I've now internalized it. And what do you imagine the action is? Now, the third step decision was to launch me out into a program of vigorous action, the first step of which was a personal house cleaning. That's why I started on an inventory of me, because we find God deep down within us. Sometimes we have to search fearlessly, so the first step was to go take a look at what had been blocking me. And now I see what it is, and I know going forward I'm going to have to go out and confess my shortcomings. Right? I already know that, but now I know what it looks like. So, am I ready? Am I ready to go to that guy I hate and tell him what I did to him that caused that hatred? Am I ready to go to that guy I hate and tell him I forgive him? Am I willing to let go of that terrible harm I suffered that I had no part in, but I'm dying from? Those are deeper questions, aren't they?
Yep.
They don't want me just rattling off prayers. They want me to know to grow in relationship with my Creator. And in order to do that, I got to get honest with my Creator. He dwells in me. I already knows the experience I've had. It was simply preparing me for something greater, because that's what we're promised here, greater works.
Indeed.
So we got to get ready. And then when we are ready, we say something like this: my Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen.
Amen.
That's based on new truth. I'm asking for power and direction to go out and start making right the harms I've done. The big harm that we forget to tell people about, those wrongs I can never make right. You know, I wasn't a very good father. And my older kids still don't talk to me. But I've got a host of young men and women who do talk to me. And they're all God's kids. So if you haven't ever internalized it, that is the big amends. Is I now, instead of my self-centered idea of importance, I go minister to God's kids that are ready.
Right.
And when mine are ready to come back, then I'll do my best with them. Does that make sense to you? That's it, guys. We're done early.
Yeah.